proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
All right, guys, welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and today I'm streaming from home. So many of you might have noticed I was gone on Friday. Kevin Wilson stepped in for me. Kevin, thank you so much. Kevin stepped in for me because my wife had to have her tonsils out. And for any of you that know about being an adult and having your tonsils out, you know it is a very bad experience. Puts you out for a little while. Apparently when you're a kid, you just kind of sleep through it. You have some Jello and stuff, and the next week you're back in school. For adults, it's a little more rough. So I'm at home here. Her surgery was actually on Friday, and I'm still here at the house. So I'll be broadcasting from home today and also Friday's show. But we are testing out some new technology here because it looks like you guys can still call into the show. So if anybody does want to call into the show, you can call in. That's 585-346-3000. And, just call in with any questions or comments. I see some comments are coming in already. So it looks like I've got Dan and Christopher and Michelle on the show. And Michelle says that when she had her tonsils out, she was out for a month. Hopefully that's not Yolana's case, but I guess we'll see. So there's a lot going on right now, politically, statewide, everything. So we're going to hit a whole bunch of stuff today. I know that we're not going to get to all of it. So whatever we don't reach today, we will definitely go through on Friday. So I'll just give you guys a little bit of an idea here. We might touch on the Mueller report. I'm sure every talk show station and host is talking about this across the whole country. So I'm going to leave that for last because you guys are probably just tired of hearing about it. I do want to talk about lowering the voting age to 16, though. So we're going to hit on that. We're also going to talk about stun guns being protected under the Constitution, some new legislation for student loans and student debt. And possibly, if we get to it, we'll talk about Cuomo expanding immigration services here in New York. So once again, if you guys have any questions or comments throughout the show, try to give us a call. That number is 585-346-3000, and I will go ahead and take those calls. So I'm going to start right off with lowering the voting age to 16. This comes up every once in a while. It came up again recently, and people kind of like the idea. People freak out about the idea. Over the weekend, I was with a friend who has some younger children, and I was talking about with their 10-year-old, and they were like, you know what? I want to be able to vote. I'm going to start a protest for this. And it was really funny. You know, this 10-year-old decided that she wanted the right to vote at 10 years old and decided that she wanted to take civic action to have that opportunity to vote. So it's interesting because one of the arguments that people use for lowering the voting age is that people will become more civically engaged at a young age. And I don't think that that's not true. I think that that's actually probably true. Now, in my opinion, that doesn't make it the right thing to do. But what I wanted to do, as I always do with you guys, is I wanted to review both sides of the story, right? So I want to tell you guys why people think it's a good reason or a good idea to lower the voting age, the federal voting age is what we're talking about, from 18 to 16. And then I'm going to give you guys my take on this, why I think that maybe that's not the best idea. So the first one I've got here, let me pull it up. So it's being proposed right now by Senator Anya Presley in Massachusetts. So she's the one that's put forth this proposal. And some of the things that she talked about are, young people across the country, they're taking the lead on what she calls key issues. Specifically, she's talking about and these are her words specifically, quote from WBUR.org, are gun violence and climate change. So that's why she thinks that the age should be lowered. But I want to actually give you guys a few other things here. So one of the things that was said is that they want kids, age 16, to participate in the ballot about decisions that affect their homes, their clean air, their future, their schools, and as we've seen, their very lives. Now, this is from Democratic Senator Shema Fagan. And she goes on to say that 16-year-olds are subject to our criminal justice system. They are couch surfing with friends while their families experience homelessness, and they're begging us to take action to protect their future. So that's her reasons. There is a website called fairvote.org. And there they list a whole bunch of things. One of the things that they say, they bring up 2 cities in Maryland that have given municipal voting rights to those age 16 and 17. And then they reference other nations, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, and Germany, saying that they have also extended voting rights to people of this age. I didn't get a chance to look at that to see if that's actually true, but there's another list here that I want to share with you guys that, oh, you know what? Hold on. Maybe, oh, okay, here we go. So here's 5 reasons for lowering the U.S. voting age to 16, and we'll just run through these real quick. So reason number 1, this is vote16usa.org. So once again, I'm giving you guys all the reasons that people are saying we should do this before I tell you what I think. So reason number 1 from Vote16USA, we need to encourage effective and relevant civic learning. And basically their idea here is because students aren't able to vote while they're in high school, they're not civically engaged. Therefore, they don't want to learn about it. Number 2, 16 and 17-year-olds have a stake in the game, and politicians must pay attention to them. So they go on to say youth are affected by political issues as much as anyone. They also work without limits and hours, pay taxes on their income, can drive in most states, and in some cases are tried as adults in court. Reason number 3, 16 and 17-year-olds are ready to vote. Research shows that 16 and 17-year-olds are intellectually ready to vote. For example, on average, 16-year-olds possess the same level of civic knowledge as 21-year-olds. Data from Australia, where the national voting age is 16, further indicates that 16 and 17-year-olds are ready to responsibly exercise the right to vote. Number 4, this is from Vote16USA. We need to make voting a habit. Lowering the voting age can lead to a long-term increase in voter turnout, bringing more citizens in touch with their government and pushing their government to better serve its people. And then reason number 5, demographic trends hurt youth in elections. Lowering the voting age can reverse it. Due to the country's shifting demographics, it is now more important to increase the turnout rate among young voters. When older voters outnumber younger voters by an overwhelming margin, as some municipalities experience, the interests of young people, such as school funding, can be overlooked. So at first look, some of this stuff sounds pretty reasonable. You know, you look at it and you go, yeah, maybe they should have the right to vote at age 16 or 17. There's some compelling information out there. Here's my feelings on it. My feelings are, in this country specifically, we're changing the bar too much in too many different areas. We're talking about a whole list of rights. We have our entire Bill of Rights, and then we're talking about when you have access to some of these rights. And the bar keeps changing. A lot of states, or maybe not states, but elected officials are starting to push to raise the age to 21 for firearm sales and firearm purchases. Well, guess what? That's your Second Amendment right. Yet we're talking about your voting right and reducing the age way down to 16 years old. There's a 5-year gap there, a 5-year gap between two rights on the same document that you can access. So what I would propose is this. Whatever the right age ends up being, 16 feels young to me. 16 feels like you're still developing. But you could say that about 18 as well. So I would say that right now, 18 is fairly commonly accepted as an acceptable age to make independent decisions. And that's like a worldwide thing. You look across the world, you're generally viewed as an adult at 18 years old. So I would say this. If it changes to 16 years old, it cannot be just voting. It can't be. It has to be everything. Let's level this out. Let's make equal access to your rights based on your age, which means things like military enlistment. If you are old enough to vote, old enough to choose who is going to deploy our military, when it's going to be deployed, how it's going to be deployed. That's a choice you're making as a voter. You're choosing who is going to send our troops to war. You should then also be old enough to enlist. So if you change the voting age to 16, military enlistment age should be 16. But that's not the only thing. You should be recognized as an adult at whatever age you're allowed to vote, which to me means you can pay taxes, you can work. In some places, you can do this at 16. In others, it's much more restricted. So same thing. It's got to be equal. Purchasing cigarettes, purchasing alcohol, consuming alcohol. All of these things should have the same age. I'm so disgusted that in this country, we can allow somebody at 18 years old to sign their life away, join the military, but we don't allow them to purchase certain firearms, and they're not old enough to drink. So they're old enough to sign that they're going to go to war and possibly die, but we don't trust them to consume alcohol. I would say the same thing with purchasing a firearm, and that's rifle or pistol. I think it's ridiculous that you can purchase a rifle at 18, and then you have to wait 3 more years until you can purchase a handgun. If we're going to give this level of responsibility to people, it should be across the board. Next 2 items here before we take a break. Signing legally binding contracts. Same thing. If we think that people are cognitively intelligent enough and developed enough to vote for who is going to lead our country, then at that point, they should be able to sign legally binding contracts. They should also be able to make their own personal medical decisions. So I say all this to say I'm not totally against lowering the age to 16. What I'm against is creating unequal access to your rights. I do personally feel that 16 feels young. 16 feels young to me. I can think of where I was at 16 and think that those extra 2 years probably benefited me quite a bit. But if we're going to make this change, it can't be just voting. It has to be across the board. It has to be everything. It's got to be military enlistment, being recognized as an adult, purchasing of cigarettes, alcohol, your voting rights, purchasing any form of firearm, drinking alcohol, signing legally binding contracts, and making your own medical decisions. So I would say if you lower the age, it's got to be for everything. Guys, we're going to take a real quick break here on Radio Free New York. I'm going to listen through the comments, see what you guys got for me, and we'll be back here in a couple minutes.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Avon Feed and Supply announces a new taste in local cheese. From dairies in Livingston, Genesee, and Wyoming counties, enjoy Craig's Creamery Cheese from 8 family farms made right here in Livingston County. Craig's Creamery Cheese, simply made with all natural ingredients. Choose your favorite variety exclusively in our area at Avon Feed and Supply, bottom of the hill, West Main Street in the village of Avon. MasterCard, Visa, and Discover cards always welcome.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
All right, guys, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. Wow, there's a ton of comments here in the feed, guys, so thank you so much. I'm going to welcome a whole bunch more of you to the show. Chris, Sarah, Kevin, Beth, Carol, Ron, Jason, Rob, and Luke. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It looks like I just got a message saying that Tony from Penfield is on the line. Tony, are you still on?
Hi, Andrew. Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. Very good. So just so you know, there's a slight delay. So give me a second to catch up since there's some latency since I'm not in the studio.
You bet.
So what you got for me?
I just want to address the voting age and such. And I would say that I'm even going to question whether 18 is an appropriate age to allow people to vote. Because I don't have a problem with people making decisions about their own lives, when they're mentally competent to do so. Which is, as you were describing, buying a gun, signing contracts, things like that. But voting now is extending their will upon others. And I'm going to say that I don't know that people of age 16 and 18 have enough life experience to understand what it means to impose their will on others. So, for instance, most of them from age 18, they have been getting free stuff from their parents. Parents have been paying for their housing, their phones, their education, all that stuff. And until they've actually experienced some of the consequences of having to support themselves, make a decision between do I fix the car or do I get a new phone, until they have some experience doing that, I don't know that I trust them to exert their will over others via voting.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. And I can agree with that. I would say though, and maybe this is a little cynical of me, but I think older people don't necessarily understand how bad it is them imposing their will on others too. We see that on both sides of the aisle with both major parties, and people of all ages imposing their will on others. And so yeah, so I agree with you. I don't know if there's a right age though, to be honest. But I do like the point that you bring up about the fact that they're not living on their own. They don't understand what it's like to basically pay their own bills, pay their own taxes, feed themselves, that sort of thing. I could totally get on board with that. I don't know that if we changed it to say 21, I kind of wonder if that would change it any though. And I say that because I'm 30. I have a lot of friends who are just now getting out of college, unfortunately, just now getting their degrees, and many of them still live with their parents or have moved back in with their parents, for other reasons, of course. But I don't know if raising the age would help any either.
Yeah, I would say, like take for instance driving. There actually is no age that says you're allowed to have your driver's license. You always have to pass a test to show competency in the verbal and the written test, and then to be able to drive the car. And I would say the same thing. In other words, if suddenly you're age 18, now you go out and work and you're able to sustain yourself, at that point, to me, you've demonstrated the skills and understanding to do so. So that would be a threshold I would consider is, an age at which you are sustaining yourself. And so as you describe your older friends who are or something who have still been going to school and yet are being paid for by their parents or whatever, or scholarships, I would say, yeah, they have not yet got that life experience. They are not yet sustaining themselves. They wouldn't get the vote either. So, yeah, I don't think it's just raising the age. I think much like a driver's license, you need to show the life competency before you get the vote.
Yeah, and that brings up another question, and then it looks like we've got another caller on the line. But the question then becomes, can your rights be restricted based on competency? And is it okay to restrict your rights based on if you qualify for them or not? So maybe this is something I'll think about for Friday's discussion. I'll see if we can extend this conversation a little bit longer. Let's see. Tony, thank you so much for calling. Looks like we've got Jim on the line from Pittsford. Jim, what do you have for us?
Hey, Andrew. I know you're on delay. I heard you, so
awesome.
Just wanted to say quickly that until they put civics back into the schools again, nobody should vote until they're paying taxes and maybe own property again. They're not on government assistance, things of that nature. But typical politicians, instead of addressing the actual problem, which is that, and I'm over 60, and civics wasn't taught. I failed the civics test before I started studying history on my own. So the kids in school, they have no idea what civics is. And
that's totally true. And to that point, I got to tell you, I did not get politically active right at 18 years old. And I often tell this story about when I was 18, I actually started my first business. It's the business I run today. And when I was 21, I purchased my first home. Neither of those things got me involved in politics at all. You would think that paying taxes and dealing with the burden of as a small business owner, I would have gotten engaged. And you would have thought that then at 21, when I started paying property taxes, I would have gotten engaged. But in fact, neither of those things got me engaged. What got me engaged was the SAFE Act. Once the SAFE Act passed and I saw my constitutional rights being stripped away in the United States of America, that's what got me involved. And that's what actually started my learning in civics and started my understanding of what was going on. It was a long path. I don't think at this point we can trust the public school system to properly educate people on civics. And to me, that means we would be restricting people's rights based on public education. And I think that would be a really slippery slope. I think internally it kind of sounds good, the idea that people need to be educated first. But I don't see our country, and definitely not the state of New York, being able to handle that correctly in a way where people would really qualify to be able to vote. At that point, you would think that, the average person probably doesn't buy their first home till they're well into their 30s, if they do at all. I know people that are getting up into retirement age who still rent. You would think about, how would we measure their success? Is it you paid your first $1,000 in taxes, now you have the right to vote, or you've paid your first $10,000 or $20,000 in taxes, now you have your right to vote. I think if we go down this path, we would start creating barriers to accessing our rights that probably shouldn't be in place at all. Actually, I would say definitely shouldn't be in place at all. But I totally understand the sentiment. I totally understand the idea of we we want people to be educated to vote, and it feels like we could fix things if we were to create a test for people to vote. But I worry that that's just the wrong way to go.
Well, education is the beginning of everything. If you're not educated about how your country operates in order to be involved with it, and not everybody's going to be involved in politics no matter what age. I look at folks like my parents who were never involved in politics ever their entire lives. They went and voted all the time, but they never got out of their seats and went to an event anywhere to support a politician, or I doubt they ever sent money in. So it's I understand what you're saying about people not being involved until it hits you square in the face. And that's what happened to all of us back in 2007, 2008. We kind of woke up a little bit, and that's what it took everybody to get going in the political process here. I've been involved with it for a long time myself, but education, if you start with a bad seed, you'll end up with a bad seed. I don't see any other way around it. And, the fact that, back to the old days where you had to have a property owner, I understand we can't go back to that. But, if you don't pay taxes, I don't think you should have a vote.
Yeah, that is an interesting proposition, because we did fight a war over taxation without representation. And that is one thing that I look at for this lowering of the age, is that, and this is kind of like a conflict, something I haven't fully worked out personally, and maybe you guys as callers and listeners can help me think of the right solution here, because I look at a few things with taxation without representation. One of them being, if you are 16 years old and you are paying state and federal income tax, you technically have taxation without representation. And I would go one step further, where depending on where you live, you can only vote in your municipality, right? So if you live in Pittsford, but say you had rental property in the city. Well, as a landowner in the city, you're actually paying city property tax, but you can't participate in city elections. So there another example of taxation without representation. So I don't know the answer how to get around that. Well, actually, let me take that back. I do know the answer. The answer is to eliminate the income tax, and to eliminate things like property tax and switch to a consumption-based tax or something similar, where there's a national sales tax. But with today's model, how that works, I don't have a good answer for you, to be honest.
Well,
it looks like it's time for a break. Jim, thank you so much for the call. Anybody listening on the radio waves or online, if you guys want to call into the show and give me feedback, that number is 585-346-3000, and we'll be back after the break.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. Great pizza, fresh and good, simply the best in your neighborhood. Come in, we'll get to know you, call you by name. We can bring it to you any time of the day. Mark's Pizzeria, we'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at SimpleTech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, SimpleTech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL. AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
All right, guys, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we've spent the first half of the show talking about lowering or raising the voting age, and specifically the federal voting age. I want to thank everybody who's called in so far, all the comments on the live stream. A lot of good stuff here, content from you guys, and great discussion. Josh from YouTube actually sent in a comment saying that he has an argument for paying taxes as related to the right to vote. He said he was working at a dairy farm paying income tax at the age of 13. So there you go. There's another example of taxation without representation here in New York State and probably in other states across the country, too. I'm not sure how each state's tax works, if you have to be a certain age to be taxed or not. But we did fight a war over this. We did fight for our independence over taxation without representation. And if you're paying taxes but you can't vote, you have taxation without representation. Now, I've got another comment in here, too, from Michelle that says she agrees with some tax. We do need services like roads fixed, snow removal, etc., but not the way we are taxed to support New York City. And I would say, I think most people agree that there's going to be some form of tax. There's a joke or a saying that goes, there's only two things that are sure in life, and that's death and taxes. And I don't think that ever we'll be in a situation where we don't pay tax. But today, as it stands in New York State, we're the most taxed state in the nation. And our roads are very, very poor. Our snow removal can be decent, depending on where you are. But I agree. We've got to bring the taxes down. We've got to come up to a better system. And I will tell you, if a lot of people, they bring me these tax proposals and say, hey, what do you think about changing to this type of tax or that tax, a fair tax or a consumption tax? My response will always be the same. If it's a revenue neutral tax, which means a tax that does not change our budget, does not change our spending, I'm not really interested in it. I want a tax system that's not only fair, that's not only appropriate, that actually allows you to own your property, allows you to own your life without being indebted to the government. But I want a program, or maybe a program's the wrong word. I want a policy, I want a structure that incorporates cutting government spending, making government smaller. Because I'll tell you, if we just change our tax system, and we go with something that says it's revenue neutral, which essentially means the government will still have the same amount of money it started with, that doesn't fix the problem. That just shifts the burden of the tax elsewhere. So I want something that actually cuts spending while being fair and appropriate. So I've got another comment here. John says he loves it when I talk about Second Amendment stuff, and that's what we're going to do next. We are actually going to talk about Cuomo getting stunned. Yes, that's cheesy. I apologize. But the Supreme Court has ruled that New York's ban on stun guns is unconstitutional. And I want to go through this with you guys a little bit, because the language in this court decision, I think, is extremely relevant, extremely important. And I want to encourage all of you to read through it as many times as you can. Don't just read through it once. Don't read through it twice. I think I've read it 3 or 4 times now, and I still am learning stuff each time, picking up something that I didn't realize that was in there. So please, I'm posting it in the comments for you guys. If you guys want to read along with me, please do. If you guys are listening to this show, on the air, I'll make sure that the link is posted on my Facebook page and on my website so that you can go back, re-listen to this show, and look at this decision line by line as best you can. Here's why. The language is important, and this could be what starts creating the cracks in the SAFE Act to break it. So what do I mean by that? Well, it basically says that weapons in common use are protected. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up some of the language in this court decision here for you guys to see. So here in one section, I'm just going to read it to you guys for those of you who are listening on the air. It says, in District of Columbia versus Heller, the Supreme Court held the Second Amendment conferred an individual right to keep and bear arms that extends prima facie to all instruments that constitute bearable arms, even those that were not in existence at the time of its founding. And then it cites certain cases, sorry. And then it goes on to say, well, not unlimited. The right secured by the Second Amendment includes those weapons in common use that are, in common use is in quotes, that are typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. So this is really important, because what this is saying is your right to bear arms is not tied to a musket. It's not tied to a firearm even. It is literally weapons that can be bearable arms they're saying it's not unlimited, but they say that these weapons are in common use and typically possessed by law-abiding citizens. So what do I take away from this? I take away from this that the AR-15 model, which has been very much under attack in New York State and in other states, could be protected based on this interpretation of the Heller decision. Now, this court case actually goes much further, and we're going to go through this because I have some concerns that come up with this as well. So if we go back in here, the next thing I want to look at is a section 1 where it says whether the Second Amendment applies. And it says the Second Amendment applies to the sorts of weapons that are A, in common use, and B, typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. So kind of a repeat of what we just read here. It says, importantly, though, Heller created a rebuttable presumption that the Second Amendment extends prima facie to all instruments. So once again, not just firearms. This could be stun guns, pepper spray, batons, whatever, that constitute bearable arms. And then it says here, not just to a small subset. If we go to the next section here, I want to bring up, this is a few more pages down. This is page 8 and 9. They talk about the idea of determining common use. And this is where it gets interesting, because in this court case, they essentially say that the defendants are trying to, or not defendants, sorry, the people bringing this court case against New York State are saying that stun guns are owned by private citizens in the United States and that they are, in fact, in common use because there are over 300,000 tasers and over 4.4 million stun guns owned across the United States. Now, New York State tried to say that, well, 4,300,000 is really a small number compared to the number of citizens in the United States, which it looks like they didn't win that argument because 4.4 million devices, that's a big number. That's a large number of things, so that can be considered in common use. I want to go to the next section here where it says, nevertheless, the court in Ramirez determined that stun guns are weapons typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, and thus concluded that the current law barring all citizens from possession or carrying stun guns, even in their home, is inconsistent with the Second Amendment. Now, this is the part that really concerns me. That concerns me because it's saying there's a few very specific words in here that concern me. The first is all civilians, and then the second is even in their home, which to me reads that they're ruling that it could be okay to ban specific people from access of them, and that they could restrict it to just your home. So this is where I say I think the cracks are starting to form, where this could be a winner for us in the Second Amendment field. This could be a winner against the SAFE Act. But where it can't be a winner is if you have the right to possess a firearm, but only in your home. How are you going to get to the range? How are you going to practice with it? How are you going to transport it? So these are the things that start to concern me when I read this language. I go, okay, so they're saying that it's illegal to ban these because you can't have it in your home and because you banned it from all citizens. But what if they want a registration program? What if they want some sort of qualification program? You don't have the right to defend yourself unless you perform XYZ, unless you pay a certain fee. So now we're creating barriers to people's rights to defend themselves again. Or they might say, yeah, you can have a defense, a stun gun, a pistol, a rifle, whatever. You can defend yourself, but only while you're in your home, not while you're out traveling freely. So that's where some of this language concerns me. I don't think it's going to bring us fully through the SAFE Act because New York State could say, yeah, well, some citizens can have AR-15s because they registered them. Therefore, maybe they fall in compliance with this ruling. So that's where I see some concerns where it's not quite a home run for us guys. It's not quite a home run for the Second Amendment, but I think it's starting to break some cracks through on the SAFE Act. I'm just going to read to you guys the conclusion of this court decision, and I really, really encourage you guys, please go back, read through this decision, read through it multiple times. Like I said, every time I read it, I see something new. I'm learning a lot about this, and I hope that you guys learn it alongside with me, because it really is important. So the conclusion reads, the New York sweeping prohibition on the possession and use of tasers and stun guns by all citizens for all purposes, even for self-defense in one's own home, must be declared unconstitutional in light of Heller. To be clear, this conclusion does not foreclose the possibility that some restrictions on the possession and or use of tasers and stun guns would be permissible under the Second Amendment. Other states have already done this. See, and then it's got some references here. Putting possession of electric weapon in home or place of business. New York might consider doing so as well. So here you go, guys, exactly what I'm talking about, where they have ruled that the ban on everything is unconstitutional, but they are also ruling that you can have restrictions, which to me is not consistent with the Second Amendment, not consistent with the original intent. And that has me concerned, and I hope it has you concerned as well. So guys, we're going to take a real quick break here. Actually, you know what? We don't have enough time for another break, so I guess we're not going to take another break. What we're going to do is we're going to jump right into student debt legislation. I'm going to leave you guys hanging on the Mueller report, and we're going to talk about that on Friday. But before I do that, I'm just going to take a brief pause, read through the comments here, see if there's anything extra. Doesn't look like there's anything to respond to, and I'm going to make sure there's nobody on the line waiting to be brought into the show. There isn't. Okay, great. So we're going to move on now to student debt legislation. The reason I bring this up is, along with lowering the age of voting rights, the student debt legislation field has been filling up consistently, article after article, about different people in different states, different representatives proposing multiple bills on taking on student debt. And I want to say just right out of the gates that this wouldn't be a problem if the education people were paying for actually got them a job that they could pay off with those student loans. So right off the gate, I want to just throw out here that if that college degree that costs maybe six figures actually gave you a job that you could pay it off and live a prosperous life, people wouldn't be complaining about it. So that's first and foremost. So clearly there's an issue with the system where the education you're purchasing isn't actually worth what you're paying for it. But as society, what we've done is we're telling people they have to have this education. We're telling them that they need it to be successful, which couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. You don't need a college education to be successful. And not just that, if we're looking at money and finances as the only way that you can be successful as society, we really need to reevaluate how we measure success. Because people want to know, oh, do you have a house? Do you have a car? Do you have a good paying job? But how often are people asking you, are you happy? Are you actually happy with what you're doing? Are you happy with what you have? And that's part of the discussion that really needs to be addressed that isn't being addressed. So I'm just going to jump in here. There's a number of bills being proposed. Anything from forgiving student debt to providing free college. Yeah, I guess who proposed that one? To refinancing student debt, to restoring bankruptcy options. Because some people maybe know this, maybe you don't. if you go through bankruptcy, your student loans are not forgiven as a part of whatever your bankruptcy is. They're one of the only things that isn't forgiven. So what's the purpose of having bankruptcy if you can't actually get through some of that debt? There's even a bill being proposed to make it so employers would pay student debt for their employees, or giving employers incentives to pay off student debt. Just a whole bunch of bills, a whole mess of them. You can go places like studentdebtcrisis.org, studentloanhero.com, and you'll see they outline a ton of information here. And I just want to give you guys some facts here, give you guys a little teaser, because I know I'm not going to finish through this today. Let me tell you how much Americans owe in student debt today. It's $1.56 trillion. $1.56 trillion. We have 44.7 million Americans with student loan debt. 11% of these loans are 90 days or more past due or already in default. The average monthly student loan payment that's not in deferment is almost $400. It's $393. The median monthly student loan payment, those not in deferment, is $222. Now, those numbers actually seem kind of low. Maybe that's because we're in New York, because I know a lot of the people I know who are paying student loans are in the $700 and $800. So I'm not sure if this is strictly undergrad or if it's just, you know, the other states have so much less that it drives the average and the median down. But that sounds pretty low to me compared to what I know my friends have in debt. And here's an interesting statistic. So the student debt number is $521 billion more than the total U.S. credit card debt. So it's almost it's more than $500 billion than credit card debt, which to me is just, it's so much money. So here's another statistic for you. $2,858 of student debt is accrued every second, which means for the duration of this show, when this show ends, and I calculate out just an hour, 60 minutes, when this show is done, that means that $10.2 million of student debt will have accrued just during this show while this was airing. That is so much money. So it's no wonder that people are freaking out about this. People are trying to figure out how to address the student loan issue, how to address the fact that education isn't actually bringing people to where they need to be. And addressing the loans. I mean, student loans now are more than some people's mortgages. One of the people proposing these laws, he's 36 years old, and he's proposing a refinance of student loans in his county using government bonds, which is kind of an interesting thing. We can talk about that next show. But he has $25,000 in student loan debt. And that's why he's looking at that as a solution. And with interest, now his student loans are actually way more than that. And he's trying to figure out how can he restructure his debt in his life and how can he help other people as well. So guys, this is what we're going to talk about on Friday. I'll give you a little recap here. On Friday, we're going to finish talking about student loans, student debt, and maybe what we can do to resolve this here, because I've got some ideas. Unfortunately, it's not really what people are promoting. Then we'll also cover the Mueller report on Friday, and we will talk about Cuomo and his new expanded services for immigrants in New York and what that might mean for your average everyday citizen and what that might look like. So guys, as always, thank you so much for listening to the show. Please continue to comment in, email me throughout the week. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have a question that you want me to address on the show or something like that you want me to get at, let me know. I'll be happy to take it for you. And I will join you guys on Friday at 1 p.m.
that's a wrap. Thanks. See you, bye.